Hello, and welcome to Book Dev 4. Your mom's a classy lady. Because she is. Alright, so the subject for today is always cheat, always win. Always cheat, always win. One of the reasons that everything is inside this cellular device, this phone that we've got, this small supercomputer, is because we've been turning more and more things into data. Because data is an extremely useful format. That's why we don't have records anymore. Data as a medium has expanded its usage extremely, to the point that we can technically argue that the other forms of medium and media don't really deserve to exist, but there's purist arguments there, but whatever. Things have become ones and zeros. More things have become ones and zeros. And that's why our smartphone now does this instead of us carrying an MP3 player and a mini disc player, if you're cool like me, or a Walkman and a PDA that keeps your daily tasks and stuff like that. And a watch, although you should still have a watch. Watches are still something that should not be surrendered to the smartphone device, or any phone actually. You got a Nokia phone strapped to your wrist, that might be okay. This is Kino. I don't even know what Kino means. Right. So data does lots of stuff, and that's good. Probably, maybe, but that is the world that we live in right now. So data is data. Data is data. One of the cool things about data is it's infinitely reproducible. I don't know if you know this. If you make a record and you sell the record is made of vinyl or some other material. I don't think it's actually made of vinyl, but you can't just press Control-C and Control-V and then another one into existence. But if you have an MP3 of that recording, or a FLAC, if you are fancy, you can just copy paste and produce another one that is literally identical. So that's kind of neat. There's cool things about data, and as we come up with cooler ways to represent the data, cooler ways to display the data, cooler ways to make the data represent other things, it becomes more and more useful. One of the interesting things is this started with like video games and Mario 64 and stuff, and they're like, hey, we had these ones and zeros and we turned them into colors on colored boxes on the screen. You're like, oh cool, those are pixels. We've got like Mario, he's hopping around, that's super awesome. And so I was like, no, you guys, what if the pixels were a two-dimensional representation of a 3D space? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, but Super Mario 64 is pretty amazing. And then, minds were blown, and then people were like, okay, the 3D era has started. We're making data, and we're making machines, and we're making experiences, and this is more to the point of VR and stuff. Different ways to experience data, such that data is becoming more all-encompassing and more absorbing of content. And I don't like using that word, but it is literally content. All forms of content is becoming digital. Even the old farts on the radio. Radio is becoming digital, has gone digital, actually, I think, in a lot of regards. I don't think the phone system is. Probably is. There's probably still some parts that are analog. I don't know. The point is, more things are data. And I have taken 4 minutes to say this. I don't know, it was kind of fun. Whatever. So, more stuff is data. Okay, so keep that in the back of your mind as we're moving forward in this world. And I want you to think about speedruns. I want you to think about serious nerds. And I say that in a loving term, because a loving manner, because I are one, who study game systems to the point that they want to speedrun and shave literally millis of seconds off of their last run. But the study of the engine, study of figuring out how this stuff works, because there are essentially what are essentially bugs. They're unintended features that the developers left in and can be abused. You're abusing the game mechanics in order to defeat the game faster. And there are interesting different levels of speedrunning, such that you literally do nothing except hit the end. You've crossed the finish line. And if you cheat the game, and if you play it on a third Sunday while rubbing a magnet against the back of it and then giving it voltage spikes at a timed pace to make it confuse the memory such that it thinks that the game is over and you won and instantly, then sure, that's an any percent. Or if you have to, 100% completion, you have to do every single thing along the way in order to cross that finish line. Okay, it's going to take a bit longer, obviously, but you're still doing movement hacks. You're doing things where you can do tricky bypasses. You might be jumping out of bounds in order to get to somewhere you're not supposed to be able to get, but you're still getting the things. You're picking up the items and you're making it across the finish line as fast as you possibly can. And that is kind of where we need to be, because this concept of speedrunning, this concept of basically cheating at the game engine, taking advantage of bugs in the system to say, all right, I completed the task that you set before me. I have completed it, and I've actually completed it in an insanely short time. Yes, so that's the concept. Now, as more and more workers become what Cal Newport calls information workers, or rather, I think he calls them knowledge workers, but I prefer to call them information workers. More and more of our daily work tasks become information things. They become ones and zeros. We're digitizing things like reports and purchase orders and things like that. And while as much as we would like to imagine that the paperless office concept is something that is viable, wow. Sorry, my brain just did a little. It's kind of a happy dance and a sad dance, because it was like, we might be able to do that. That might be possible coming up. Crazy. As things become more and more digital, more and more of your job becomes more digital. And I hope that you're beginning to see where I'm going with this, because I want you to speedrun your job. I want you to get your work done as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. And I want you to take advantage of every avenue you possibly can to get things done in a way that is easy on you and keeps your boss happy. Accomplishes the goals that you that someone else has set for you in this task. And the analogy to that is if you're doing an any percent completion, or if you're doing 100% completion, there's always some level that you can accomplish, and then just say, okay, this is what my boss needs. I'm not saying now, when I say always cheat, always win, I don't mean lie. Cheating is different from lying. Just as the person pointing his camera, backing Mario into a corner and then pointing his camera at a certain angle and then doing 3 backflips that are frame perfect and then clipping through the wall, he has not violated the rules of the game, because the rules of the game have already been set out. The rules of the game allowed this. It was unintended, but they allowed this. And the game is still happy that they won very fast. So I'm not saying lie. I'm saying cheat. I'm saying be as quick as possible with all of these tasks, because all of these tasks are, well, it depends on your job, but data. Thinking about this from a programmer's perspective, if you see, if you start writing up cases for your code and you see a pattern, you say, well, I hate patterns. Patterns are bad. These need to go away. And you abstract them out into something else. You reduce the amount of lines of code, of repetitive structures, so that it's easier. You abstract them out instead of saying, in case this, do that, in case this, do that, in case this, do that. You're doing, in case XYZ, pass a value to some other function. And then that other function can evaluate it one time instead of over and over and over. Instead of you having to type it over and over and over, because this is instructions that you're giving the computer, and the more instructions that you set up, the bigger the space is, the harder it is for you to troubleshoot and debug, and any updates you need to do, you have to update it in more than one place. So these are abstractions that you would absolutely hate to see in your code, but we're doing them in our meta interface. We're doing them in our keyboard and in our mouse and in our navigation of our operating system. We're doing them constantly because we nice because we like to think about work in the terms of hard material. We'd like to think about the work being accomplished in terms of screwing heads on dolls. We think that this is something that is that scales the same way manufacturing scales, and it just does not. Similarly with any type of cognitive work, so like writing a book. Like, okay, well, all you got to do to write a book is you sit down and you spend 8 hours a day writing your book. There you go. Hours go up, that means more widgets go up. Therefore, hours go up means more book gets written. And that's simply not the case. As with any other cognitive task, there are limits to how you do it. There is a timing to how you do it. There's a cadence to how you do it. And it's something that you need to spend time in, brainstorming sessions. You need to spend time editing, probably, hopefully, as you go. Varying the job will result in more output than just a rote interpretation of how to write book. Step 1, write book. Step 2, publish. So there are different balances that can be achieved there, to the point that if you optimize your workflow, if you optimize yourself, your brain and the functions that you're doing, you can accomplish more work. You can get more work done, and that work is of a better quality, and it take less time. You're accomplishing something that is higher quality and has less friction, has less friction. So there are optimizations you can do to make to let your work flow more easily, and the comparison to manufacturing is where I think we're kind of stuck right now, because all these people, if the factory floor manager walks out and he sees someone staring at the sky and goes, "Hey, what are you doing down there? You're not screwing the doll heads onto the doll bodies right now. What are you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm thinking." It's like, get the hell out of here. What are you doing? You don't have to think about it. You screw the head on the doll. And we've applied that to information work. Popping your head out and then seeing someone who is, don't have a better example, staring at the ceiling, and then go, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you staring at the ceiling?" And he goes, "Huh? What? What are you doing? You're off in space." "Yeah, I'm thinking about something, and I just lost it. It was 15 minutes into that thought, and you just interrupted me. So now I've lost 15 minutes. Well, it didn't look like you were working." Well, I was. Sorry. This is not something that happens. Instead, people are just interrupted, and it's like, "What are you doing?" My boss shared with me when we were talking about some of this, like the power of taking breaks. He said some of the most productive workers, programming workers at his workplace previously, were the guys that took a lunch by hopping on their bike, going on a 3-mile bike ride, and then coming back, taking a shower, and then continuing work. And it's like, what are you doing? I'm riding a bike. Why aren't you working? I am. This just does not fit together. It doesn't jibe. It doesn't fit with our concept of work. And this is actually something, and this is my something I've bothered with for a while, and this is something that Cal Newport, in the book that I'm reading, Deep Work, addresses, interestingly. It's the idea that we apply this to ourselves as workers, and even as informational workers or knowledge workers, where we would say to our boss, hey, I'm thinking, this is valuable thinking time that I need to have in order to do good work. We instead look at our jobs as a rote measure of keystrokes, or a rote measure of hours worked. And we look at how many times did I press keys today? That means how many git pushes, how many git pulls did I accept? How many pulls? What? Yeah, how many pull requests did I process? If that number's high, then I did a good job. Like, that's not how you should measure your work, because there is a quality over quantity thing. And I think that we knowledge workers, not necessarily programmers maybe, but also probably programmers, regress to a point where I'm not screwing heads on dolls, and at the end of the day there's a giant pile of heads on dolls over there, and I go, wow, I did all that today. So we instead think that, like, the more buttons I press, the more the busier I am, the better a worker I am. And the longer hours I put in, the better a worker I am. And like, Japan has this problem. It's like, well, everyone has to be there for 10 hours, for 11 hours, for 12 hours, otherwise you're not working hard. And I can almost guarantee you, every single one of the workers, that the last 3 hours is just like, when are we gonna, where's the boss? Oh, here's me making noise. I sure sound busy. Where is he? Is he leaving? Where are we going? And it's not productive time. And this is like, I was talking to I forget who. I was talking to someone about this. I was talking to a pastor about it. And I was like, if someone was going to take, someone had an hour lunch break, or let's say like a half-hour lunch break, something like that. If you just doubled the lunch break, you'd probably get more productivity. Like, if you sacrificed 1 extra hour of post-lunch productivity and said, that is now your extended lunch. You had 1 hour for lunch, and then you come back to work for 4 more hours. Well, now you've got 2 hours for lunch, and you come back to work for 3 more hours. That would probably be more productive. Like, I would be very interested. That would be something that might be measurable. I want to try that in a field that is measurable. But the idea is that you've got this concept of, like, your boss says more hours means more work is accomplished. Quantity over quality. And then the worker themselves is in this perhaps somewhat existential quandary of, like, my job is now to move ones and zeros around, and my lizard brain does not process that as work being accomplished. So you know what? I'm going to try really hard and type really hard and press lots of buttons, and at the end of the day my hands are going to hurt because of how much work I did. I'm going to click that mouse, and I'm going to click it 10,000 times today. And you know what? I might even click it 20,000 times today. This concept that we're like we're moving bricks around, but we're doing it with ones and zeros is just completely so far out of scope that it's hilarious. But it's what we're doing in a lot of cases. We're comparing this physical motion, this physical activity, to the act of moving ones and zeros around. These same ones and zeros, which, like I mentioned earlier, speedrunners are happy to break down to their component parts and experiment with in order to figure out how to not necessarily hack the game, but basically cheat. Basically cheat to win. And here we are looking at our job and saying, well, I got to try hard, because if I work hard, then that means at the end of the day, I done good. And working hard in this case is like getting an RSI, getting carpal tunnel. Like, my hands ache. So that her hands can look like this, that kind of thing. And it just doesn't apply. It's not even close. And instead, we're just like burning up our body. We're burning up our muscles. We're straining ourselves with very simple, repetitive tasks for no reason, for data, for ones and zeros, which I haven't even mentioned. Computers, really good at doing stuff with ones and zeros. Really, really good. You should be trying to figure out You should be abstracting these motions out. You should be saying, hey, I've done this same sort function on this data like 8 times today. What if that was one button? What if that was one keyboard shortcut? Any of this stuff. So much data is just ETL. Extract, so much report generation, so much work, knowledge work is ETL. Extract, transform the data, extract the data, transform the data, load the data into some other system. Even if that system is email, like you produce a document and you email it to your boss. That is one unit of work. And your boss doesn't care, or rather shouldn't care, how that data gets to him. He just cares that it arrives and that you produced it, actually, for those people who are those absolute legends who are accepting like 5 jobs and then outsourcing the jobs to India. Which is just so many levels of hilarious that I can't. It's like, what a time to be alive. The companies are outsourcing the workers. The workers are outsourcing the company. Oh, I love it. All right, I might actually share this one. This is book notes, but yeah.